Page 164, Section 3, Piel Irregular Forms. Look at example 8. Example 8, where I give you the verbal root ma'ans. Is this actually in the vocabulary?
We've had it.
Oh, no, we haven't had this verb. And I don't think this isn't that common a verb, but it's a nice paradigm verb to illustrate. Ma'an means to refuse. But the point here is simply to illustrate what's going to happen if we wanted to take this verbal root and make it a piel. By the book, what would we do? We take the three-letter root and we should put a dagesh forte in the middle root letter, right?
Yep.
And then point it as a piel, which would give us that pattern. This is like kittail, except now, well, obviously, what's the problem here? You can't put a dagesh in a guttural. That's the problem. Now, have we seen this problem before? Yes, we have. Okay? Remember, when did we see this problem? The main culprit was the definite article, right? The definite article is supposed to be hey, pathak plus dagesh forte, but we realized that if that first letter is a guttural, G stands for guttural there. If the first letter is a guttural, you can't do that, right? Remember what happened when we added the definite article to a word like Adam? We should add the definite article with hey, pathak, dagesh forte, but we can't, so what happened? We call this compensative lengthening. In order, see, when you put the dagesh in and have a closed syllable now, you have a short vowel and a closed syllable. That's what's really going on. If you can't double that consonant, you don't have a closed syllable, you have an open syllable. An open syllable should have long vowels. This probably actually makes sense to you now. That's called compensative lengthening. Well, if that solved the problem of a guttural not taking a dagesh forte when we had this situation with the definite article, guess what's going to happen with piel verbs when we obviously have a similar situation? We're going to get compensative lengthening. What does this mean? You can't close this syllable by doubling the consonant, so this is an open syllable. Open syllables prefer long vowels. So this vowel, this is the vowel that's going to lengthen. What vowel family are we working in now in the piel? All right, the EI family, right? That's the EI vowel. So if the short I is going to lengthen, it's going to lengthen to a long tsare, the long vowel of the EI family, namely tsare itself. All right? There you go. There's compensative lengthening. That's the most common way of solving the problem of not being able to put a dagesh in a guttural when you really ought to be putting a dagesh there. You write the form now, following what you know and not looking at the book. If this is the perfect, write the imperfect form, the piel imperfect of the root ma'an. You should be able to generate this. Put it on the back of an envelope someplace. I'll give you a hint. It's going to start with a yod. Right? You already know what to do. Got it figured out? Again, the basic principle to dealing with irregular verbs in Hebrew is to proceed as though the verb were regular. You do what you're supposed to do unless you run into a problem. Well, the one thing you're supposed to do is put a dagesh in the middle root letter, and that's a problem. But before we solve or resolve that problem, what's the rest of the form going to look like? if you've memorized the vowel pointings of the Piel imperfect, it's got a schwa under the prefix, and then this pathaxere. Yikatel, remember, was our regular verb with the dagesh, of course. Yikatel, right? Now, what about the dagesh? What's going to happen? Well, once again, we can't double the letter, so what do? Compensative lengthening. What does it mean in this instance? Which vowel lengthens? The pathak, the vowel that would fall in the syllable that the dagesh forte would conclude. So this pathak is going to lengthen, and it's going to lengthen to? Why comets? Because it lengthens within its own, in this case, a family. Make sense? Easy enough, right? Easy enough. What's the imperative of ma'an? Write the imperative form. All right, well, you got it if you take this off, right? All right? Are you paying attention now? What is this form? What's this form? What's the difference between ma'anu and katalu? I'm going out of my way to confuse you here. Am I succeeding? This is Piel imperative, second plural masculine, right? What's katalu? Kal, right? Suddenly this A vowel which has now come up as a comments, starts looking a lot like the comments you learned in the Kal. Okay? Well, all right, that can confuse you. And again, you can get these sort of oddball problems where the context is going to probably tell you whether you want a second person or a third person, whether you want an imperative or a perfect, whether you want a PL or a Kal. But here's where you can start getting confused if you're not paying attention.
Why is that?
So does ma'an not occur in the...
Yeah, see, that's a good question. Here's another clue. There are verbs that simply don't occur in the PL, and there are verbs that may occur in the PL and not in the Kal. Okay? And again, your lexicon becomes your friend here. When in doubt, look it up. And the lexicon will tell you, A, if it occurs in particular conjugations, and then B, what it means if it does occur in those conjugations. I promised more than once that I would review the third hey problems. Okay, once and for all, there's always confusion over the third heys, and here's what I would suggest we do. You almost can make a summary chart of third heys. By the way, in the appendix, there's a whole set of every form of the third hey example there, and let's use bana simply as a paradigm. Whether it occurs in the Kal or the PL is not of a concern to me, but simply as a representative root. Now, remember what happened to third heys in the Kal. Let's go back and review the Kal perfect. There are three principles with third hey roots. When the third hey is there, it brings its own vowel. The vowel that goes with the third hey will always be slightly different from what you'd expect. What's the regular verb at this point? The Kal perfect is katal, but the vowel is a short A vowel, not a comets. It's not a big deal, but it's different. Okay? Now, as we conjugate this out, as a general rule, when we take a third hey root and we add a consonantal suffix to it, like katal,